Among history's most remarkable figures, Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna was born on the 13th of June, 1882 in Peterhof Palace near St. Petersburg, Russia. She was the youngest child of Emperor Alexander III and Empress Marie of Denmark. As a child, Olga was close to her father but had a distant relationship with her mother. Olga and her siblings spent their early years at Gatchina Palace, a place away from the hustle of court life, where they led a modest life compared to the grandeur of the royal family. Her father, Emperor Alexander III, was a strict but caring figure, and Olga cherished their time together. Sadly, her father died when she was just 12 years old, and her older brother Nicholas became the Tsar of Russia. This loss had a significant impact on Olga's life. She grew up during a time of political tension in Russia and witnessed the growing challenges of the Russian Empire, including the difficult relationship between her family members and the political changes sweeping through the country. Olga's early life was shaped by the complicated relationships within her royal family. In 1899, at the age of 17, she was introduced into Russian high society after the tragic death of her older brother George. Her first marriage came at the age of 19, when she married Duke Peter Alexandrovich of Oldenburg in 1801. Their marriage, arranged by their families, was an unhappy one, marked by emotional distance and unspoken struggles. Peter, who was believed to be homosexual by those around him, and Olga, who longed for a loving relationship, lived separate lives under the same roof. Although their marriage was never consummated, they remained married for 15 years, until it was annulled by the emperor in 1916. During their marriage, Olga became deeply dissatisfied with her situation and yearned for love and a stable family life. It was only after the annulment of her marriage to Peter that Olga found true happiness with her second husband, Colonel Nikolai Kulikovsky, a man she had fallen in love with earlier. They married in November 1916, just before the Russian Revolution began to shake the foundations of the empire. Despite the challenges of royal life, Olga's second marriage brought her emotional fulfillment, and the couple had two sons, Tikhon and Guri. Together, they faced the uncertain future of Russia, particularly as the political climate became increasingly volatile, leading to their eventual exile. Olga's life was not only defined by royal hardships, but also by her significant contributions during turbulent times. One of her most notable achievements came during World War I, when Olga served as a nurse at the front lines. Despite her royal background, she took on the challenging role with determination and courage, attending to wounded soldiers in difficult conditions. Her bravery did not go unnoticed. She was awarded the Order of St. George. For her exceptional service, Olga's dedication to the soldiers under her care was a reflection of her deep compassion and sense of duty. In addition to her nursing efforts, Olga was known for her charitable work. She was involved in various philanthropic activities, including supporting schools and hospitals in rural Russia. Her commitment to helping others extended to her artistic endeavors as well. Throughout her life, Olga painted and created over 2,000 works of art, which provided a source of income for her family and supported the causes she cared about. Her paintings, often depicting nature and simple daily life, revealed her deep connection to the Russian landscape and the spirituality she derived from it. Despite the challenges she faced in her personal life and the political turmoil surrounding her, Olga's achievements as a nurse, philanthropist, and artist marked her as a figure of resilience and dedication. Her contributions to society, both in Russia and in exile, left a lasting legacy, particularly within the Russian émigré community. The Russian Revolution of 1917 marked a dramatic turning point in Olga's life. As political unrest spread across Russia, the Romanov family found themselves in danger, and their world began to crumble. Olga, along with her mother, the Dowager Empress, and other family members, fled the chaos in Russia to seek refuge in Crimea. The situation was dire. Her brother, Tsar Nicholas II, and his family were placed under house arrest, and eventually they were executed by revolutionaries. In the face of growing danger, Olga and her family were forced to live under constant threat of assassination. However, their escape to Crimea was not the end of their struggles. Life in exile was full of uncertainty and hardship as they faced the realities of being displaced from their homeland. Despite these challenges, Olga found solace in her second marriage to Colonel Nikolai Kulikovsky, and together, they cared for their two sons while attempting to create a stable life in a foreign land. Olga's escape from Russia in 1920 marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She joined her mother in Denmark, where they lived in relative peace, though far from the comforts of royal life. The journey out of Russia was fraught with danger, but it also reflected Olga's resilience and determination to protect her family at all costs. Over the following years, Olga would come to accept her exile, building a new life with her husband and children in Denmark, but she never fully recovered from the loss of her homeland. After fleeing Russia, Olga and her family began a new life in Denmark, where they were welcomed by the Dowager Empress. Life in exile was a stark contrast to her former royal existence, but Olga adapted with remarkable resilience. She and her husband, Colonel Nikolai Kulikovsky, settled in the Danish countryside, where they lived a relatively simple life. Olga, who had once enjoyed the opulence of imperial palaces, now focused on raising her two sons, Tikhon and Guri, and working on the farm. She embraced a life of simplicity, away from the royal courts, but continued to support the Russian émigré community, many of whom were displaced by the revolution. Olga's life in Denmark was marked by a sense of quiet dignity. She took on the role of secretary and companion to her mother, and over time, Olga became a significant figure in the émigré community. While Olga enjoyed her new life in Denmark, it wasn't without its challenges. Her sense of loss remained, and she had to come to terms with the loss of her homeland and her royal status. Despite these difficulties, she also found personal fulfillment in her art, painting over 2,000 works, many of which reflected her deep connection to Russia and its landscapes. Olga's connection to her Russian heritage never faded, even as she built a new life in Denmark. Her artwork, her charitable work, and her role within the émigré community were vital parts of her identity. Though she had left behind her former life as a Romanov princess, Olga continued to play an important role in preserving the memory of the Russian monarchy. Throughout her life, Olga Alexandrovna found solace and expression in art. Even as a young girl, she was encouraged to explore her creativity, and her love for painting grew steadily. Despite the dramatic changes in her life, including exile from her homeland, art became a constant companion and a means of emotional release. Olga created over 2,000 works of art, ranging from landscapes to still lifes, often capturing scenes of nature that reflected the beauty she cherished in both Russia and Denmark. Her paintings were not just personal expressions. They became a source of income for Olga and her family. Living in exile, she needed to find ways to support her loved ones, and her art provided a way to do so. While Olga preferred to exhibit her works in Denmark, avoiding the commercialism of North America, her paintings were displayed in numerous exhibitions in cities like Copenhagen, London, Paris, and Berlin. Her work was celebrated for its sensitivity, and it resonated with those who saw it, capturing the serenity of her spirit despite the hardships she faced. Olga's dedication to art not only offered her a sense of purpose, but also allowed her to contribute to charitable causes. The proceeds from her artwork were often donated to organizations supporting Russian émigrés and other charitable endeavors. Through her art, Olga left a legacy that transcended her royal status and connected her to both her past and her future. In the mid-1920s, Olga Alexandrovna had an unforgettable encounter with Anna Anderson, the woman who claimed to be Anastasia, Olga's niece. Anna Anderson, an imposter who had spent years convincing people that she had survived the brutal execution of the Romanov family in 1918, met Olga in Berlin in 1925. Anderson's story was full of inconsistencies, and Olga was skeptical from the start. However, driven by curiosity and a sense of duty, Olga agreed to meet Anderson. When Olga saw Anna Anderson in person, she immediately noticed several differences that made her believe the woman could not be her niece, Anastasia. Olga described how Anderson's features were not those of Anastasia, whom Olga remembered as a young girl before the revolution. Olga also pointed out that Anderson spoke only German, while Anastasia was fluent in both Russian and English, which only deepened her suspicions. Despite the emotional encounter, Olga concluded that Anna Anderson was not her niece. Olga's refusal to recognize Anderson as Anastasia led to controversy, as Anderson's supporters tried to twist the narrative to suggest that Olga had been pressured to deny the truth. However, Olga remained steadfast in her belief that Anderson was an imposter. This meeting marked a significant chapter in Olga's life, as she witnessed firsthand the lengths to which imposters would go to claim the Romanov legacy. Olga Alexandrovna's life in exile was far from easy. As a member of the former Russian imperial family, she faced ongoing political and social challenges. Although she settled in Denmark with her mother and later in Canada, the shadow of the Russian Revolution and the fall of the Romanov dynasty followed her wherever she went. Olga remained connected to the Russian émigré community, and many of them looked to her as a symbol of the old Russian monarchy. However, Olga's royal status made her a target for political manipulation, especially as the political climate shifted in Europe. During World War II, the political tension intensified as the Soviet Union became a major player in the conflict. Olga's sons, Tikhon and Guri, both served in the Danish army, and their internment by the Nazis added to the family's struggles. Olga herself found herself caught between loyalties to her Russian heritage and the reality of living in neutral Denmark during the war. Though she was not actively involved in Nazi collaborations, Olga's connections to Russian émigrés fighting against communism led some to accuse her of sympathizing with the German cause, which caused further distress. Her social standing within the émigré community was also complicated by the continued existence of imposters claiming to be surviving members of the Romanov family. Olga often had to deal with these imposters and the public attention they attracted, adding another layer of stress to her already difficult life. Despite the difficulties, Olga managed to maintain a sense of dignity and continue her charitable work, all while struggling with the emotional and social challenges of exile. In the late 1940s, Olga and her family made the decision to leave Denmark and move to Canada, seeking a fresh start away from the lingering fears of Soviet persecution. They settled in a rural area near Toronto, where Olga and her husband, Colonel Nikolai Kulikovsky, purchased a farm. Life in Canada marked a significant change from the royal palaces of Russia, but Olga approached it with the same resilience she had shown throughout her life. The family adapted to the quiet, rural lifestyle, growing crops and raising animals, though the work was physically demanding. As Olga grew older, her health began to decline, and she had to adjust to the realities of aging in a foreign land. Despite her physical limitations, Olga remained a strong figure within the Russian émigré community, often welcoming visitors from her past life in Russia. Her sons, Tikhon and Guri, had grown up and moved on with their own families, but they remained close to their mother, providing support as she navigated her later years. During this time, Olga continued her art, but her paintings became less frequent as her health worsened. Her focus shifted from public engagement to a more personal life, surrounded by her family and close friends. She never fully accepted her loss of Russia, but she found comfort in the memories of her homeland and the love of her family. Olga's later years in Canada were peaceful, but marked by the same underlying sense of loss that had followed her since her exile. Olga Alexandrovna passed away on the 24th of November, 1960, at the age of 78 in Toronto, Canada. Her final years had been spent in relative quiet, living in a small apartment with the help of friends. Her health had been deteriorating, and she had been hospitalized just a few months before her death. Despite her modest life in exile, Olga remained a beloved figure among the Russian émigré community, who viewed her as the last Grand Duchess of Imperial Russia. Her death marked the end of an era for the Romanov family, but her legacy lived on through her children, her art, and her contributions to charitable causes. Olga's funeral in Toronto was attended by many, including former members of the Russian Imperial Army and émigré families, who mourned her passing with deep respect. She was buried next to her husband, Nikolai Kulikovsky, at York Cemetery in Toronto. In the years following her death, Olga's life and legacy continued to inspire many, especially those within the Russian diaspora. Her art, which captured the beauty of both Russia and Denmark, became a symbol of the enduring spirit of the Romanovs. Olga's life was defined by her resilience in the face of adversity, and she left behind a lasting mark on both her family and the Russian émigré community. The news of Olga Alexandrovna's death in November 1960 was met with sadness and respect from those who knew her in the broader Russian émigré community. Olga had spent her later years in relative obscurity, far from the grandeur of the Russian Empire, but her death marked the end of an era for many of her fellow émigrés. Those who had escaped Russia after the revolution, along with former Romanov loyalists, mourned the passing of the last Romanov Grand Duchess. Her family, particularly her sons, Tikhon and Guri, were deeply affected by her death. Though they had grown up in exile, away from their royal heritage, they held great respect for their mother and her perseverance. Olga's passing also resonated with other members of the Russian royal family, who recognized her as the final link to the old imperial family. The Russian émigré community in Canada, Europe, and the United States held memorial services in her honor. The sense of loss was palpable, as Olga's death symbolized the fading of the once mighty Russian Empire. In her adopted home of Toronto, she was remembered as a woman of grace and dignity, someone who had navigated the challenges of exile with courage and compassion. Olga Alexandrovna's life was one of remarkable resilience, marked by personal challenges, royal duties, and the upheaval of exile. From her childhood as a Romanov princess to her later years as an artist and philanthropist in Canada, Olga navigated the tumultuous events of her time with grace and determination. Though she faced personal losses, including the execution of her family members during the Russian Revolution and the hardships of living in exile, she remained committed to her family and to the causes she believed in. Her art, charitable work, and the quiet strength she displayed in the face of adversity left a lasting legacy. As the last Grand Duchess of Russia, she symbolizes the endurance of the Romanov spirit, even as the world around her changed dramatically. Olga's life story is not just one of royalty lost, but of a woman who adapted, created, and contributed to the world in meaningful ways, despite the many challenges she faced. What do you think about the life and legacy of Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna? How do you think her story impacted history? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content on historical figures and events. Thank you very much for watching.